Welcome back. Ayurveda, the Science of Life 101, Session 8, Diagnostics and Awareness. We are in the final session of 101. Up to now, we've built the framework: elements, doshas, mental states, Agni, and Ama. Now we move into application, because at some point this stops being theory and it becomes observation. Ayurveda is not dependent on labs or external validation to begin understanding the system. It starts with what is already available to you. Your body is constantly communicating. The question is not whether information is present. The question is whether you're willing to look at it directly. In Ayurveda, diagnostics is observation, not assumption, not labeling, not guessing, but rather observation. It's why the practitioners typically give you a dosha test. We are looking at patterns, how the body presents, how the system processes, what repeats consistently. This is not about finding something wrong. It's about recognizing function. And if you are 100% honest, most of what we are ignoring, it's not because it's unclear. It's because we don't want to deal with what it might mean. So in Ayurveda, we start with what is visible, because Ayurveda is very practical. Before you reach for complexity, you look at what's already in front of you. So this is a beautiful graphic on the Ayurvedic diagnostic process, and I'll give you a moment to screenshot this. But what I want you to take away from it is you look at what's already in front of you. The tongue, the skin, the eyes, the energy patterns, the elimination patterns. They're not secondary indicators. They are primary data points in Ayurveda. You don't need interpretation yet. You just need attention. So I'll pause here for you to screenshot. Now we're going to move on to the tongue as a map. Tongue is one of the most accessible diagnostic tools we have. It reflects the internal state of digestion and accumulation, not in a symbolic way, in a functional way. Different areas of the tongue correspond to different systems. But before you even get into mapping, you look at three things: color, coding, and structure. These things alone can tell you a great deal. I'll go ahead and pause here for you to go ahead and screenshot this as well. A healthy tongue is relatively simple. It is pink, moist, with a light, thin coating, and free of deep cracks or swelling. Not to say that you won't have some of that, but it's nothing dramatic. And honestly, that's the point. When the system is functioning well, it does not present with excess. Remember, excess is ama. It is clear and unremarkable. If the tongue immediately draws your attention, that's information. So look at the coating. A thicker coating on the tongue often indicates ama and accumulation. This coating is not random. It reflects what's not been fully processed. A thin coating can be completely normal. A heavy, opaque coating suggests the system is carrying residue. And this is where honesty comes in, because most people will see this and immediately look for a way to explain it away. I don't want you to do that. I want you to instead just note it. Next, you're going to look at color variations. Color matters with tongues. A pale tongue may indicate low energy or depleted function. A red or inflamed tongue can reflect excess heat, often linked to pitta patterns. A darker or dull tone may suggest stagnation. Again, you're not diagnosing a condition. You're observing tendencies. And over time, these tendencies begin to form a pattern. Structure also provides information with the tongue. Cracks in the tongue, especially when persistent, can indicate dryness or depletion. Swelling or scalloped edges may suggest that the system is holding or not processing efficiency. You might see malabsorption. The tongue is not hiding anything. It reflects what's happening internally. Really, honestly, the question is whether you're willing to see it without immediately trying to filter it. So next, we look at dosha signs in kind of an overview. We've got to connect them here. Different patterns show up differently. Vata tends towards dryness, irregularity, and cracks. Pitta tends towards redness, heat, sensitivity. A classic Pitta tongue might be a very pointed tongue. Kapha tends towards thickness, heaviness, and coating. These are not rigid categories, they are tendencies. And they help interpret what you're seeing. Remember, at this point, we're just observing. So a vata imbalance will often present as dryness, cracking, irregular appearance, maybe thinner body structure overall. In the tongue, this will show up as fissures or lack of moisture. In the body, it shows up as inconsistency. Nothing for them feels stable. The system moves, but not in a coordinated way. You might see kind of jerking and twitching. I'll pause for a moment for you to go ahead and screenshot the Vata imbalance chart. Pitta imbalance presents as heat, redness, inflammation, sensitivity, sharpness in presentation. On the tongue, this may appear as a redder tone or an irritated surface. You can just kind of see it. In the body and mind, it shows up as intensity. Things are processed, but often with excess force. So I'll pause for a moment for you to go ahead and screenshot the Pitta imbalance slide. Now we move on to Kapha. Kapha imbalance presents as accumulation, thickness, heaviness, coating, slower movement. On the tongue, this is often that classic thick coating. In the body, it can show up as stagnation, extra weight. Essentially, the system holds more than it's moving. So I'll pause for a moment for you to take a screenshot of this slide. I want you to take away from this what matters is not one isolated sign. It is a pattern. If you see dryness, irregular digestion, and inconsistent energy, well, that points in a direction. If you see heat, intensity, and irritation, that points in another. It's like puzzle pieces. Diagnostics are not about perfection. They're really about putting puzzle pieces together and about seeing patterns and consistency. Those same patterns can appear in the mind. Vata correlates with anxiety, overthinking, restlessness. Pitta correlates with irritability, judgment, intensity. Kapha correlates with attachment, withdrawal, and heaviness. This is not separate from the body. It is the same system expressing itself through different channels. There is no separation. There is no clean line between physical and mental. They go together. What you eat affects how you think. How you think affects how you digest. And what you don't process physically or emotionally, well, that will stay in the system. That's actually the loop that we are talking about now and have talked about all through Ayurveda 101. So next, let's go ahead. Let's have a little fun and let's really talk shit. Okay, let's talk about elimination. Yes, this is where we talk about it directly, because ignoring it doesn't make it less relevant. It just makes you less informed. You may be smiling and kind of laughing right now because, yeah, I actually said we need to talk about this, but it is a process in the digestive process. It's literally the final thing where you eliminate. So it's either physical, mental, emotional, but it will happen. And, you know, elimination is one of the clearest indications of digestive health. If the system is taking in, processing, and converting effectively, it should also eliminate effectively. As I said, it's the final piece of that puzzle. If it's not, well, frankly, that's information. And information is never something you should avoid. So, normal elimination, what's normal? Let's talk about what's normal. What's normal is regular, complete, eliminating without strain, having it be not overly loose or overly hard. Feeling complete afterwards is important, feeling relieved. Nothing extreme, nothing dramatic. It's functional, it's not performative. So let's look at the doshas. Vata elimination, imbalance shows up as dryness, hardness, irregularity. You may even hear me say it's just the little rabbit pellets. This often means constipation or inconsistent patterns if it's imbalanced. The system basically is not moving in a coordinated way, if that makes sense. Sometimes it's a little quicker, sometimes it's not. It's usually hard and dry. Pitta imbalance with elimination, well, that's pretty easy. It'll show up as looseness and urgency. Oftentimes burning or discomfort. You know, in my world, we call that fire butt. It's no fun. The system is literally moving too quickly. Transformation, oh yes, it's happening, but it's not happening in a balanced way. You know that if your pitta digestive fire is imbalanced. Next is kapha elimination, imbalance in kapha. Well, that shows up as heaviness, sluggish movement, and the dreaded sense of incomplete elimination. I don't know if you've ever gotten up from the toilet and felt like you could do more, but knew you couldn't in the moment. That's no fun. It's a stagnation. It is literally the system holding. So let's have a little honesty check here, because it really does matter. No one really wants to talk about this, but your body is already telling you this truth. You can either work with that information or you can continue to ignore it. You really have no in-between option. So let's pause for a moment and do something experiential. Let's take a mirror out, take a moment, and look at your tongue. I don't mean casually, I mean actually look. Color, coding, structure, I don't want you to judge. I just want you to observe. You might be surprised. Ask yourself, do you see patterns, dryness, heat, heaviness? In digestion, in energy, and in mental state? Let your answer be straightforward, because this is where Ayurveda really becomes real. Not in theory, but like I said, in observation. Because once you can see your own patterns clearly, you can begin to work with them intelligently. So I want to thank you for joining me in this series, and I really hope to see you in the 201 series. We'll begin adjusting based on what you've observed. For now, just keep it simple. Look at what's already being shown to you, and really don't look away. Once again, thank you for joining me. I'll see you in 201.